Hello guys, today we're going to explain a weird movie called Hardcore Henry. So let's begin. At the beginning of the film we are shown a man named Henry. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself in a laboratory with a woman. This lady is a scientist, as she reveals when she tells him her name. Estelle inquires of Henry if he reminds us to how he arrived here, but because Henry is unable to talk, he nods his head. Later, Estelle joins his hand with a robotic arm. That's when it starts to behave like a human. Later, Estelle informs Henry that she is his wife and that she adores him. Because you were involved in an accident, your surgery has already been completed. She takes Henry to another scientist. She requests him to implant a voice device in Henry. As a result, Henry will be able to speak and say anything. Before the scientist could implant the voice device in him, a man named Aachen with his companions arrives and attacks. He makes every effort to imprison them all. We can see that the man Aachen has a lot of power in this scene. He could fling anyone into the air with its assistance. Not only that, but he could control them after flinging them into the air. Throughout this, Estelle plays loud music. As a result, Aachen and his companions become distracted. Estelle takes advantage of the situation and departs with Henry. We learn that they're on a plane as they travel forward. It indicates that the lab was on a plane. They only have one skateboard and one parachute with which to escape. That is why Estelle urges Henry to leave, but he takes Estelle with him. Later, they arrive in Moscow City, and Estelle passes out due to the rapid landing of the skateboard. While she is regaining her senses, Aachen's group arrives. They proceed to encircle them on all four sides. That is why Estelle has asked Henry to meet them all. They begin to beat Henry as he tries to confront them. They throw him from the flyover after attacking him with an electric gadget. When Henry realizes they'll encircle him from there, he takes refuge in a garage. When a soldier attempts to attack him, Henry murders him with a car wiper attack. In the meantime, Henry takes advantage of the situation and attacks them. In the meantime, a man named Jimmy arrives. He informs Henry that he has been waiting for this time for 3 years. Later, when they were both in the car, Jimmy asked Henry a question. As a result, the car gets involved in an accident, and Henry becomes injured as well. That's why he passes out. But as soon as he regains consciousness, the people of Aachen attack him. That is why Henry seeks refuge in a store. In the meantime, the police officers arrive. Henry murders them one by one while fleeing and arriving at a bus. Meanwhile, a man approaches him and introduces himself as Jimmy. With the use of a tool, he removes the device from Henry's hand. He claims that you've been tracing with its assistance. With the use of a fire thrower, the man ends Jimmy. During this time, Henry makes every effort to end that man. However, the bullets have no impact on him, and he flees to save his life, who requests that he meet him at a specific area by sending the address. Henry, on the other hand, manages to depart from there. During this time, Henry uses the machine gun to attack them. A man steals Henry's gun during this time. As a result, Henry starts shooting them with another gun. He reaches the last survivor's car. There, when he arrives, he discovers that his wife Estelle has been imprisoned there. As a result, he releases her, and Henry becomes aware of his wife's deteriorating condition. Because she was terrified and befuddled, she was convinced she would never see Henry again. Aachen strikes the area during this moment, and Henry passes out. Aachen and his gang arrive there as he regains his senses. They start beating Henry violently. Later, Aachen threatens Henry and asks him to murder his wife, that if you want to save your wife, you must put your life on the line. When Henry accepts, Aachen attacks him with a baseball bat and throws him out of the car. Jimmy, on the other hand, was outside and saving him. Their attack yet again, Jimmy and his companions are ended. During this time, as he watches this, Henry begins to run to save his life. There was a tank nearby that started chasing him. After snatching the sword, Henry begins ending everyone in the tank one by one. He ends the other passengers getting out of the helicopter. He then begins climbing in the helicopter after gripping the rope. However, the helicopter's rider cuts the roping. As a result, Henry trips and collapses. Meanwhile, he receives a call from Jimmy, who provides him with another location. This time, Jimmy also invites him to meet him at this location. When he was getting closer to that area, he finds Jimmy in the forest, completely covered by plants. That is why he invites Henry to accompany him. He leads Henry inside a building where a girl is being tortured by police officers, but one by one, Henry and Jimmy end the officers. After that, Jimmy brings Henry into his laboratory. Later, he shows Henry a video in which he learns that Aachen has previously attempted to develop sliders similar to these, who are both cognitively and physically capable, yet he has always been unsuccessful. During this time, the real Jimmy comes there, but his body was paralyzed. We learn that Jimmy undertook such research in order to heal his body. In order for him to be able to heal his body, Aachen has invested in that study. That's why, when Jimmy learned of my plans for Aachen, he had stopped working for him. Later, Jimmy has made a large number of bodies and acclaim. He could now walk because of them. This was the reason why, after dying, Jimmy returned back to life in a different form. Because of this, Jimmy begins to rag on Henry and asks him, "A cheater, you've deceived me. I've put my faith in you in taking you into my lab. You, on the other hand, have provided Aachen with all of the information." That's why Jimmy tries to turn Henry off. Henry, on the other hand, confronts him and begins ending all of his forms one by one. Meanwhile, Jimmy's body, in a new form, falls to the ground. When Jimmy notices this, he asks Henry to end him, but Henry refuses. "Jimmy, don't be stupid, and be relaxed." He understands, Aachen will be encountered by both of us. Jimmy is immediately prepared for this. Both of them start shooting people with snipers. Later, they attempt to flee by abducting the genuine Jimmy. Meanwhile, Aachen's troops approach from all sides, encircling them. That's why Jimmy completely destroys the upper store. As a result, both Jimmy and Henry are able to flee. They then left from there. After getting inside the car, they make their way straight to Aachen's headquarters. They run across the same man, who is dressed in a metal jacket. The man tries to use a fire thrower to attack them. After attacking him, Henry brutally ends him. Meanwhile, Jimmy dies here later, and Henry ruthlessly murders all of the troops one by one. After that, he enters a room where Aachen's video was playing on the television. He discovers that Estelle is not his wife, but rather Aachen's. Estelle informs every lab victim that "I'm your wife." She checks the powers. After emotionally connecting with them, Henry has the impression that Aachen is in his room at the time. That's why he pulls out his gun and tries to attack him. Aachen throws him a long distance and orders his man to attack Henry. He begins to murder Henry with his own hands. Because Aachen has the ability to control anything, that's why Henry passes out thereafter, becoming increasingly weak. When he regains consciousness, he notices Estelle and Aachen standing in front of him. During this moment, Henry learns that it was Estelle's plan all along, because they believe that if a soldier learns his wife is in danger after regaining his senses, he can do everything to save her. As a result of their success, Aachen wishes to create many more robots like Henry, whose minds will be genuine human minds. After defeating Henry, Aachen moves on to the next step. Before he could continue, Henry attacked him and began breaking his hands. As a result, Aachen begins to fly everything in the air utilizing his abilities. As a result, Henry couldn't visit him. Despite this, Henry reaches out and slices his neck with the wires he possesses, ending him brutally. Henry later presents Estelle with his severed head. As Estelle watches this, she becomes enraged and begins shooting him with a gun. Meanwhile, Henry uses his hands to deflect the gunshot. As a result, Estelle is hit by a gunshot. She hangs out with a helicopter. Because of this, while seeking Henry for assistance, Estelle says, "You must listen to your heart, which is telling you that I am your wife." Henry ignores her and shuts the helicopter door behind him. Estelle is also slain as a result of this. And this movie ends here.